Hi everyone, I'm Kathy at Well In Montclair, and this is Jessica Berliner, who works here as our holistic nutritionist and magic widget and knower of all things. We're going to talk, we're going to have two segments since this is Weight Loss Month. We're going to have a discussion about medical weight loss. Jess and Tira run that program and work together. And then later in the grouping of videos and things that are available to you, we'll also have a discussion about weight loss that is not driven by GLP-1s. So, first round, we're talking about GLP-1s,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
Right. Um, as we look at it, in terms of um, finding or having discussions with people about GLP-1s, when you discuss this with candidates, how is it, or because I know it's really an individualized discussion and an individualized response to the question. How do you determine with someone what directions they should go, whether that's one side of the coin versus the other?
I think it's a decision that people make for themselves. I'm there as a guide, I'm not there as the determining factor. Because whether somebody has 5 or 10 pounds to lose, 50 pounds to lose, or 100 pounds to lose, it can be just as stubborn, or they can have just as many concerns about why they can't get that off, whether it is a physical injury, whether it is food noise that feels insatiable, whether it is just a plateau that they cannot figure out what is that little hiccup that they can't get past. Again, it could be hormone concerns, anything. So really I can help guide whatever decision they feel comfortable with, but you can't say that one person's a candidate and one person's a not, based on how much weight they have to lose. It really is about the concerns that are preventing them from the weight. Okay. Now, then there are medical concerns where somebody would not be a candidate, but otherwise, if it's just about making the choice of yes or no, it really is just what somebody feels comfortable with and what they need to help them reach their goals to feel best in their skin.
Okay. When you talk about medical concerns, what do you see as problematic?
Do you mean for why they would not
Why they would not be a candidate?
Any history of thyroid cancer. Also, anybody who has a very low muscle weight, low muscle mass already. Um, you know, it's something we'll probably dive into a little bit deeper later on, but if somebody already has a really low muscle mass or osteoporosis, osteopenia, concerns around their bone density, then sometimes if they lose weight too drastically or they're losing muscle too much, then even though they're losing weight and may feel good, are we putting them at risk for other health concerns?
Okay. What nutritional mistakes do you see that affect the appetite of people who do GLP-1s?
People focus on one macronutrient. So there are three macronutrients: carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And people will focus completely on one, thinking that that is the answer. Okay. The biggest one being protein, which is incredibly important to maintain muscle and, again, for other factors. But you can't only eat protein and neglect fiber or healthy fats.
Oh, but why?
And well, look, yeah. we hear about protein. High protein diets have luckily come back into popularity because people have been under eating for so long. But it's just, then people don't eat fiber, then they're having more extended GI issues. Their satiety is going to be worse. So I do find that as people drop their appetite, they either lack macronutrients by focusing on one, or sometimes they'll try to save their calories for the food they want. Like, it's like, well, I know I'm not going to be hungry, but I really want the ice cream. Yeah. So they won't eat the healthy meal, but so that they can fit the snack in. So, it's sometimes about making your calories more efficient because you are going to be eating less. That's what the medication does. But so really one of the goals is to make sure, again, calorie efficiency.
Is there, in terms of utilizing good foods in terms of how much you're eating and when you're eating. How many meals, and I know this is an odd and stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How many meals are you typically asking someone to manage in their day?
It really depends. One, it depends how many meals they've been eating before the medication, whether I'm meeting them before they start their journey on the medication or after, where they're at then.
Okay.
When people have slower gut motility, you do need a break in digestion to actually break down and absorb foods. So a lot of times I'm not asking people to have a lot of meals per day because that grazing mentality sometimes actually hurts people. But it also depends on their dosage of GLP-1 and where their appetite is. So I might have them doing more frequent, smaller meals, but trying to work up to doing, whether it's 2 or 3 like bigger meals with like a snack, or looking at it just differently. But each person might be different. I would say, though, that they still need breaks in their digestion, so not constantly eating to try to meet their needs.
Okay. Are there, and this is off book, but I know you can do it. I know you can do it. Are there supplemental things to do or supplements to take along the way to improve, kind of that sense of slowed gut or constipation?
Yes.
Okay. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Plenty. Again, look, nothing is going to take the place of making sure that you're eating enough fiber, drinking enough water, like stress management, sleep, all of the things that help your digestion move on a regular basis. But there are so many different natural supplements that don't have the same physical dependency as some of the laxatives that are out there, or also don't maybe have the explosive results of some of them. So there are ways.
Smooth tea?
Can work in a pinch, but maybe not for daily use. Even natural supplements can be used too much. So, again, very, very personalized, but, good options are always like a magnesium citrate. There's different fiber supplements. There's also different Ayurvedic herbs that help with motility to make sure that, the gut is moving in the way that it needs to. And then there's also combinations of all of those things. So, okay. And again, also depends, did the person have GI issues before starting a GLP-1 and now they're worse, or honestly just the same? Or is it specifically because of the medication?
Okay. Let's see. Why do you think plateaus happen?
So with GLP-1s, I think sometimes when you take something that revs your metabolism, because it does, as soon as you take it, that's why a lot of people get that energy fatigue the first day of their shot, things like that. It really is utilizing calories very quickly and then tapers towards the end of the week when it's wearing off. But in general, I think it can be such a drastic shift to the system. And so whenever you start something new, whether it's a medication, whether it is just, a non-medicated diet, people have really good success at first. And then you need to adapt or change or move things around or enhance exercise or movement. So I think there's always going to be a really good shift at first, and also inflammation, losing water. So what happens is then the body might plateau. And also, you're in a calorie deficit, and your body can only maintain a calorie deficit for so long before it says, hey, what's up? You're starving me. And so sometimes people may need to take a break, decrease their dose, increase their calories a little bit so their body feels safe, because it is about a cortisol and a stress management mechanism. And so if the body feels safe again, then it might feel safe to lose weight. Otherwise, it's trying to conserve whatever fat it has to preserve its vital organs and everything. So
recalibrate, reset, and then resume.
Yeah, and not for everybody. Some people are great at their dose. Sometimes it is just switching up their fiber, their macronutrients. Are they drinking enough water? Were they moving too much for the amount of calories they were eating? So it doesn't always have to be a change in dosage, but sometimes a little bit of a shift has to happen to just kind of help reset the body.
So it sounds like it's intensely nuanced and dependent on what the underlying concerns and constitution was of the person who's in front of you, and then how they're moving through this,
Yeah.
what changes they've made, what activity they're doing, what everything else about their system looks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also whether they're the person who is trying to lose 10 pounds, 20 pounds, 50 pounds, or 100 pounds. And also if it's a woman, do they have a menstrual cycle?
Yep.
Are they menstruating? And so there are different factors that could play a role. So, plateaus that are the main frustration around weight loss in general, whether it's medication or not. So, if it was easy to get over the plateaus, weight loss would be a lot easier.
Yeah. All right. What do you believe the value add is for a patient to have you involved in their weight loss journey, regardless of whether it's medical or non-medical?
Because I'm fun. No, I do think weight loss needs to be fun. I think there's a lot of stress and pressure on it. So I think sometimes having like a partner in it who you can kind of voice your concerns and stress, but is important. But all kidding aside, I do think that, the goal with weight loss is that it should be sustainable. And if it's medicated, a lot of times the medication is doing the heavy work. And really what it should be doing is acting as a buffer while you make changes that are going to be sustainable over time. And so whether you have an extensive amount of food noise, if it's taking it away, then it's giving you that time to really build those healthy habits. So figuring out and having somebody to like hold your hand and put together a plan with you, I think is important. Because the internet has a lot of information.
Yes.
And figuring out which one is right for you or your medical concerns, or even what if you're that person who has a ton of inflammation, you're perimenopausal, like there's at least 3 different diets for all of those things. How do you put them together to make the right one for you? So I think sometimes it's about putting that conflicting information together, but also just making sure that you're also putting in that effort so that whether your goal is to come off of it, stay on it, build muscle while you're on it, again, whatever the long-term goals are for the medication, that you have somebody who's helping to make sure that it feels sustainable, or that if something happens and it changes, then they can adapt with you.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important. And then even if it's a non-medicated weight loss journey, it's looking at how it can be personal for you. Again, whether it's, if the perfect diet on paper looks like it's a really high protein, high meat diet, but you have intense cardiovascular disease in your family, are you stressed out by the fact that you're eating more saturated fat? So how can you balance that and come up with a plan that makes sense?
Yeah, I think one of the keynotes of people who come to see you is that, yes, it's fun, first of all, and secondly, it's not punitive, that there isn't this sense that things are being, slowly removed from the table in terms of what can be eaten, that generally you have strategies around, how to find something crunchy and salty for the person who needs that, or how to find something that's sweet and balanced and actually is giving you, better micro and macro nutrients as you're eating something that's, supposedly not good for you, but it is based on how you presented it. So I think that it is, because you can go and have a diet that AI sets up for you.
Oh,
but
yeah.
if you didn't ask the right questions, you're not getting the right responses. So if you were not able to look at all of the changes in your system and say, these are the markers, you're not going to get the right responses, first of all, and you're also not getting an appropriate handhold when you need the handhold.
Yeah, and I think also, whether it's especially like hormonal shifts are a really good factor. Like, how do you tell somebody that they're having a really hard time with PMS, but they're trying to follow a diet that is on paper and it doesn't work for their lifestyle? Yeah. Or you have a mom who has young kids that they're chasing after, or even a young father with kids that they're chasing after, and they just don't have the time to put the plan into action. So I think it's always having a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, and adapting and understanding that you can still be healthy and then you can be healthier.
Yeah.
And so just there are different gradients of what that looks like.
Okay, Jess, could you tell me everything I don't know about InBody?
Okay, I don't know what you know about the InBody, but I'll just give a breakdown of it.
Just give a full breakdown.
I'll give a breakdown. So The in-body is an advanced body composition analysis. So it's a fancy scale, but it uses different frequencies to look at cellular health, skeletal muscle mass, percent body fat, intracellular and extracellular water. And so those are a lot of words.
Yes.
It's a lot of words. But what we're doing is we are trying to see not just how much you weigh, but what the composition is. And it does it by different segments. So it looks at each arm, each leg, and then trunk, which is from hip to neck. And it's also looking at visceral fat. So visceral fat is what we consider more the dangerous fat that's in between the organs.
Yeah.
It's more linked to cardiovascular disease, chronic disease, and so a little bit more important when we're talking about health risk, not just necessarily aesthetics.
Right.
Both matter, but when somebody has a high visceral fat content, it does affect longevity and their health outcomes potentially. So now, again, lots of words. Skeletal muscle mass, that is looking at specifically how much muscle we have in our body. And the in-body looks at it both as low, medium, and high. And none of those things are necessarily good or bad in total. It's about the context of each number. Skeletal muscle mass, we always want higher. Higher is better. And that is going to be about, and it's going to drop, right? Like if you're losing weight, you're going to lose muscle. Medicated weight loss, you do lose a higher percentage quicker.
Yeah.
So that's why I like to use the in-body with people who are on GLP-1s, because we can monitor, are they losing muscle too rapidly? I will usually expect some muscle loss. But then we also, what if they're working out and they never did before and now they're gaining muscle? So the scale number, the total weight may not shift a ton, but we can look at what it's made of. And so muscle mass is incredibly important for that, especially with the GLP-1s. Two other factors, one I mentioned, one I did not. Percent body fat, which I think is incredibly important when we are looking at fat content.
Right.
It also measures BMI, and I hate BMI. I think it's dumb. Truly though, because it is looking at height versus weight. So if you are a bodybuilder, you are obese. If you are a pregnant woman, you are obese. It doesn't actually look at the composition of what that weight is.
Right.
Percent body fat does. So we have different numbers that we like for women versus men that are optimal. It has a wide range for the in-body, but we can look at what we think is optimal and we can adjust our goals based on those numbers. One of the factors that I think is really interesting is the water content. And so intracellular, which is inside the cell, and extracellular, which is outside of the cell. You want at least about 60% of water inside the cell and about 40% outside. Okay. And it could be a little bit more than 60. So those aren't exact numbers, but the reason why is you want the inside the cells to be nice and fluffy. When they are fluffy, they are healthy. They don't look dehydrated. They're like a grape, not a raisin. And so when you have a fluffy, nice cell, that means a little bit healthier mitochondrial health, DNA. And so also it's about minerals and how they're floating inside and outside of the cell. So as far as electrolyte imbalance or even inflammation. So sometimes people will have a higher imbalance in the number when we see dehydration or injury. So I think that those are really interesting numbers that help us look at health in a different way versus just looking at a static number on the scale that people get frustrated with. I also think it's very cool. We can see injuries based on that. You know, again, it's looking at muscle and fat per leg and per arm. So, you know, people who are right-handed or dominant on one side tend to have more muscle on that side. But if they had an injury, an ACL tear, things like that, we might actually see that even though they're right side dominant, their left leg has so much more muscle because they've been favoring it. Yeah. So then it can even help tailor like work